So thank you for joining this webinar with Norfolk Citizens Advice, where we're going to introduce our grants database to you. My name is Isabel Abbott and I'm the grant researcher at Norfolk Citizens Advice, and I've been working on this project since October. The project is funded by the Coordinated Community Support Programme, and that works with local councils and communities to provide emergency support for anyone facing unexpected costs so that they continue to live their lives as normal. And there are a number of projects across the country, and this is just one of them. And it's aimed at raising awareness of pots of financial support available in Norfolk for individuals in crisis or hardship. So I was employed for 6 months to research small grants in Norfolk because it was suspected there are lots of small trusts and pots of money that we thought could be available to people in difficult circumstances. So my job was to identify them and bring them together into one shareable resource. So in the session today, this is what I'm going to cover. So I'm going to demonstrate the database, explain the functionality, the different search options, and how the information is structured, and also the links on the database to further information. I'm going to give you a chance to have a go with some examples yourself, and then also look at other resources available to help you train staff and volunteers to use the database if you want to. So there is a video already on the site, a short video. There's the hints and tips. This webinar has been recorded, so you can have a copy of that if you want. And then there are webinar notes and handouts if you want to use those to train people in your organisations. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about going forward, so how the database will be updated, and also the roadmap for what might happen in the future. And throughout that period, I will take questions and comments. I think I would prefer not to do questions in the chat, just because that gets a bit messy if there are lots of them in there trying to get back and find out where we're up to. So what I will do, I'll stop periodically and you can ask questions then. We're going to keep mics and cameras off during the presentation just to minimise distraction when I'm demonstrating the database. And as I said, if you save questions for the times when we ask. So if I go now to the database. So the database is actually on the Norfolk Citizens Advice website. That's where you'll find it. You can see there's a tab that says grants. So it will be open access on the database. At the minute it's password protected, but that will be removed shortly and you will be able to get straight on there. When you land on the database page, you'll see there's some information here about what the database covers, short information about the search functionality, and some tips about searching. And when you move down, this is how you access the database down the page. So you can see here the quick demonstration of the video. It's only about 3 minutes for people who've not used it before. This is how you search using this search for grants now button. There's a document here which I'll explain later about tips for successful applications. And then there's an opportunity here to provide feedback. So if we go on to the database now, search for grants now, that takes us onto the directory page. So when you land on the database, the information is ordered based on the last organisations that you've looked at. So if you've been looking at a few organisations, you'll see them lined up here. You can change the order if you want to do that using this button here, most recent button, and you can change it to business name, which puts them in alphabetical order if that's the way that you prefer. When you land on the page, there are 15 organisations showing, and you can get it to show more by clicking the show more button there. And again, another 15 by clicking there. It'll just keep building up 15. But obviously that's a very laboured way. If you decide to look at the grants that way, that would be a very intensive way of doing it, labour-intensive way of doing it. So what we've got is 3 different ways of searching. So you've got the search button, you've got search by tags, and then over here, you've got the mapping. So I'm going to show you here the 3 different ways of using these functions. So if we start with the search function, you can see that already within this function, there are 3 different ways of searching. So you can search by text. First of all, free text. So if I type in here, welfare, and click search, you will see the organisations that come up, and that picks up the word welfare anywhere in the entry. So you can see for this one, Asher Welfare Charity, the word welfare is actually in the title. If you look at grocery aid, the word welfare there is in the email address. And if you look at the National Benevolent Charity, you can see that the word welfare there appears in a tag. It's actually the beneficiaries are people on welfare benefits. So that's the way that that function works. Always clear your filters before you go into the search, otherwise you're going to limit the organisations you search for to the ones that are already there. If we go back to the search, you can see that you can also search by beneficiary. So if I click down, it's got the beneficiaries who are listed on here. So for example, if I clicked on carers and click search, so it must already be some tags on there. Just let me clear that a second. Come to there, clear that. Again, sorry, if I click onto beneficiaries, if I click on carers, you'll see that brings up 2 organisations. So as I've just shown, it's really important to clear your filters before you go into your next search. You can also search by purpose, so the purpose of the grant. So for example, if it's about education, you click on there, click search, you get the organisations that give grants related to education there. Again, clear your filter. So the next way that you can search is by tags. So the tags are basically a list of all the beneficiaries and all the purposes, the purpose of grants listed on the database. So you can see, for example, you've got ex-Navy families there, ex-Royal Air Force families there. You can reduce the number of tags by typing in some search information here. So for example, if I type care there, it reduces it to 6 tags. So you've got care, care leavers, care home fees, young people in care, and carers. And then the final way to search is using the map pin. So if I click on that, you'll see that the map appears, which shows mainly organisations based in Norfolk. I can maximise the page by clicking that button there. And then I can zoom in. If I know the area that I'm looking for, then I can just keep zooming in until I find the village or town I'm looking for. So for example, if I click on Swaffham here, you can see that 4 organisations come up that have got that give grants to people who live in Swaffham. So to clear the map filter, you click on the pin again, that button comes up, the clear filter, and you clear the filter. So some of the organisations you'll see are represented not by a local pin, but by an England pin. And those are the national organisations that are on here, but also the organisations that cover the whole of Norfolk, because we couldn't have a pin that represented Norfolk. So if I click on there, you'll see that there are some national organisations. So you've got this ACTS organisation, the Bank Charity Workers organisation, but you will see that there are also some Norfolk-wide organisations. So you've got the Norfolk Assistance Scheme, Norfolk Community Foundation, Norfolk Millennium Trust for Carers. So you can see how that works there. So generally, just clear that filter. The map function works by this pin here. And what the pin represents is the area covered by the organisation. So a lot of these organisations cover very small areas, maybe just parishes or villages or towns. So this map pin here, this organisation covers Terrington St Clement. And there are 2 exceptions to that. So the first is what I've just explained to you there, where if an organisation is a national organisation or Norfolk based, it's represented by an England pin. But the other time that doesn't apply as well is where the organisation covers more than one town or village. So if you look at this organisation here, Anguish Educational Foundation, you can see that it's got a Norwich pin, but also it's got an additional tag to say that it covers other areas as well. So it covers residents of Norwich, but also these other towns and villages here as well. So if we look at the information that we've got on each of the entries, so again, we'll look at this Anguish Educational Foundation. So each of the entries has got a read more link. You can see that there. So if you click on it, that gives you more information about the organisation that we've got listed. So you can see it's got the name of the organisation, so Anguish Education Foundation. Then it's got the beneficiaries, so this is for people under 25, and that's where they've got to live. And then it's got the purpose. So this organisation is primarily for education grants, but it will consider other needs as well. Then it's got a web address, so that will link to the organisation's website in many cases. So you can see here, just clicked on that link. This is grants for individuals, so click on that to get more. And then that gives you information about Anguish Educational Foundation there. So there's always a link to more information. For some of the organisations, I'll show you that in a minute. If there's no website, then it links to the Charity Commission website to give you more information there. So the entry also has information where we have it about application information, so how to apply, and it will sometimes tell you as well whether or not clients can apply direct or they've got to apply through a third party, such as an advice agency. And then also if we have the information, or if they have one, it will tell you what the maximum grant is as well, payable. So just looking at, just to be clear. So just to show you one of the entries where, so if we look at this one here, Barton Turf Charity Relief in Need, and read more about that. So on this one, you can see the web address that it links to is the Charity Commission. And it also says here, under application information, it says see Charity Commission website for contact details. And that's because we've not been able to make contact with this charity. It's not engaged with us. So we've just instead linked you to the Charity Commission. We've not been able to find another website for it either. Some of the organisations that are linked to the Charity Commission do still have more information here because, you know, we've been able to engage with the charity. So not all of them say this, but this particular one does because we've had contact. So if I click on this page, what this gives you is all the information about the charity that we've been able to get. So you can see that it's got, for a charity that covers quite a small geographical area, it's got quite a healthy balance, a healthy income. The governing document page tells you what it covers, so that covers the parish of Barton Turf. And then the contact information gives you the contact details there. So that's how you would make contact with that charity. So that's all I've got to say at this point. We're going to have a go and look at some examples now. Are there any questions before I move on to doing some examples with you? No? Okay, so what I'm going to do first then, I've got 4 examples and I'm going to work through one with you. And then after that, I'll put them up on the screen. I actually have already sent them to you as well, so you should have them. And then I'll give you a chance to work through those examples, the other 3 examples yourselves, and then we can come back and talk about them later. Okay, so the first example, I'll put it up on the screen first just so that you can see it. So it's this one here. So it's a young couple. They're living in Yaxham and they're struggling to afford petrol money for frequent hospital visits for the husband to have chemotherapy. And he works in a bar but was furloughed before he became ill and he's now on sick pay. So this is not Google, it's not a massively sophisticated search engine. It's basically trying to work out what the tags, what are the keywords that will get us some information. And again, remember what I said, you use one at once. Really, that's probably the most useful thing to do. Otherwise, you're going to filter out organisations because it's going to look for all the tags at once, as opposed to one or two. So for this one, we're looking at where they live, Yaxham. We're looking at the fact there's a health issue here, is on chemo, so that could be cancer. And we're looking at what he does for a living, so he works in a bar. So let's just have a go now and see on the directory what we might find there. So the first thing I'm going to try is a search here. So I'm going to try first of all health. We've got health problems, so I'm going to try health. Sorry, again, I've got a filter on. I can't emphasize enough. I need to take your tags off. Make sure I've got one there. And there. Okay. So I'm going to try health. Go search. Okay, well, that's not bringing anything up. So let's try instead cancer. Let's try cancer. Okay, so that's brought something up. So that's brought the cancer community chest for people with life-threatening or debilitating illnesses, and they've got to be residents of Norfolk. So that's one that's worth a go, isn't it? To look for in that situation. So it's worth making note of that. Maybe having a read further, see what the information is, see if that is something that's relevant for this person. Then clear the filter. And then let's have a look at the tags to see if there's anything there that might be useful. So he works in a bar. So we can see there's two tags related to the drinks industry. So if we click on those, that brings up two organisations, Hospitality Action and the Drinks Trust. And those obviously for people who work in the drinks industry. So those are worth a look as well. Both those two organisations are worth a look as well. So you would read more and then just see if they're worth a go. Okay, clear your filter. And then, so the third thing you might want to look at is where he lives. So he lives in Yaxham. So let's just maximise and then zoom in. And my geography is not brilliant in terms of Norfolk. So let's just see what comes up. So there, we've got Yaxham. Click on that. You need to minimise the screen. And you'll see there, Yaxham parochial charities comes up. And they typically give grants for around £50, and that tells you how to apply. So again, that one is worth a go. So you can see, as I said, it's not Google, it's not massively sophisticated. It's about thinking about keywords that might be useful for this particular individual and then having a go. I'm going to close that down. I'm going to make sure I've cleared my filters. And then if I put those examples back. So what I'm going to do first of all, I'm going to share with you, I'm going to put in the chat, this is the password on the website where the data is at the moment. It's not going to be behind a password once it's released properly. I'll put that in the chat. You should all have that now. So go onto the website, have a go at these 3 examples, number 2 to 4. I'll give you about 10 minutes and then we'll come back and can have a chat about them. You can ask any questions. Okay. You can put your mics up if you want, just in case you want to ask questions as you go through. Okay. Okay, so has everybody had a chance to do those questions? Hopefully so. So anybody got any questions or any comments that they want to make about having a go using the database?
I'll start. I found it quite easy, straightforward to use. Thought it was fine from that point of view. I just had one question though. I found out that if I put in a beneficiary and the purpose of the grant at the same time, it didn't really give me the organisations I expected. Do you have to search for beneficiaries and purposes separately then?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, if you put both in, if you put two bits of information in, then it searches for both at the same time. So then it's going to limit you. It's not going to bring up the organisation that might be able to help because they meet one of those eligibility criteria. So yeah, so the best thing is always really to search for one at once. Sometimes it's useful if you maybe reduce down the search, if you want to use the map function, to then look at the map function when you've limited the amount of data. So for example, let's say you put in as a benefit under purpose, any purpose considered, there's one there that's any considered. If you put that in, that will reduce down the number of hits that you get. And then if you then use the map function, you'll be looking at a map with fewer entries. So that's probably a good way to use that, to use sort of 2. But generally, it's probably better to use one at once. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. So any more questions?
Hi, yeah. Will it be password protected, and kind of who will have access to those passwords then?
Yeah, it's password protected now just because we're still testing it, but it's going to be rolled out shortly, and after that it's not going to be password protected. It will just be open access. It'll be a tab on our website, and people just go on and use it. So people from organisations can use it, but also members of the public can use it as well. So no, it won't be password protected.
I had another one as well. Another question: how will it be kept up to date?
So we'll keep it up to date in a couple of ways. So on the website, there's a feedback sheet, which I'll show you in a little while. There's a feedback sheet there, and on there you can tell us, if something's out of date or there's something you want to add to it, or just your experience of using it. But also we'll do a periodic review as well. So probably once a year, we'll write out to all the organisations to say, this is the information we've got on you. Do you want to give us any, updates? And then we'll do a big update then as well. So that's how we'll keep it up to date. And we have got funding to be able to do that. Okay. Okay. Any more questions?
So we'll basically be able to make any kind of comments on that feedback form. So you can tell us a range of things. You can tell us, as I said, if things are out of date, and I'll show you that later. We'll go through that with you in a minute. But so basically you can tell us if it's out of date. You can tell us your experience. We're also going to ask you if you give us your contact details. You don't have to, but that will enable us then to follow up to see if, for example, if you had not just a positive experience of using it, but if you were successful in getting the grant. So also about that really outcome, so that we can share that with our funders.
I
Okay.
have another question. Sorry, how does this fit in with the Turn to Us website?
So I think the Turn to Us website, excuse me, has I think it's over 800 organisations on it, and a lot of those are national organisations. This has got about 350, and probably 50 of those are national organisations. So if there's any overlap, it's going to be largely those national organisations. But obviously, it's not a massive overlap because there's a lot more organisations on the Turn to Us than there is on ours, and ours only got about 50 national ones. Because the brief for this really was that it was for local grants, because there were a lot of those were hidden. And so, but I've put the national ones on it. We've put some national ones on it as well, just because to make it kind of smoother for people in. I know in Norfolk Citizens Advice, a lot of people use various other sort of, self-collated database or data tools, and I just thought it would be useful actually to bring those together, and that's why we've put some of the national ones on really for ease of use. Okay.
Can I just jump in on that point? So 350 organisations sounds like it's fantastic coverage of the county, but are all of those organisations actually on board with this being on this database?
Well, we've attempted to contact all the organisations, and some responded and some didn't. So the ones that have responded, we've put their information on there in full. The ones that haven't, we've referred to the Charity Commission website. So that's the way that that's the way that it's worked really. Some of them, we've told them all what we're doing. If people have objected, we've taken them off. Most haven't objected, but some haven't engaged at all. So they're on there, but the majority of information about them comes from the Charity Commission website.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Any more questions? No? Okay, so what I'll do now then is I'll go back to the website and just show you again a little bit about what's on there. So we've got this is really about additional resources. So we've got this video here, which basically is a condensed version of what we've been through just now. It just shows you very quickly in 3 minutes the different functionalities, the different search functionalities. Then we've got this document here, which is tips for successful applications, and I'll show you that. So where this document comes from, when we wrote to all the trustees about the charities, we said to them, we asked them to fill in a form, and we said to them, please give us any tips you can about maximising successful applications. And we also talked to the trustees as well. And these are the things that they told us. Now, these things seem pretty obvious, really, but they obviously aren't, because the trustee said that people don't do them. So one trustee said, we sort of skim 80% and reject them straight away because they're just not addressing the criteria of our grants. So that's why we thought it would be useful to have this. So the first thing that they said was check the grant criteria and be sure to address them in the application. So again, seems obvious, but trustees tell us it's not always done. Get estimates for goods and work and include them where asked, and give information about your circumstances where asked. And again, that seems really obvious, but trustees are telling us people don't always do that. So check the geographical coverage of the grant. So again, I showed you what the mapping generally means, that's the coverage. But actually, many of these grants, these small local organisations, go back decades and even centuries. And the boundaries are the original parish, the ancient parishes. So the modern day town boundaries or village or parish boundaries may not apply. So it's always worth checking where the boundaries of these organisations do apply. So one trustee said to me, it's the current village plus 3 streets. So it's always worth checking, does this organisation cover me? And, a couple of them also said that we will go a little bit further as well. you know, if people are in genuine need. Some charities struggle to find beneficiaries that meet their criteria, and that's because, you know, a lot of these grants use very old-fashioned language. You know, they talk about poor people, and it can be difficult to see poor people today. Although I think it's probably getting a little bit easier with the COVID situation, but so they're struggling to find beneficiaries in their locality. And so they've had to find different ways of finding beneficiaries. So, for example, one trustee said that what their charity does is that they buy every 11-year-old a school uniform when they go to the big school. Another one said that they give every student who goes to university £300 a year while they're at university. So they're having to find inventive ways to spend this money. But some charities have said that even though they've done that, they will still consider genuine need if it's presented. So, you know, don't be off put by the fact that you may know the organisation and you think that they spend their money in a particular way. It's still worth asking. As you probably already know, some charities only deal with support agencies, so they won't deal with clients direct. So where we know that, we've put that on the database. Don't be put off by what looks like a small income, because some charities are linked to others. So when I asked one trustee whether it was worth keeping them on because they only had £48 income a year, he said yes, but we're linked to 4 other charities and we consider everybody against each of the different charities, and altogether there was about £4,000 or £5,000 a year, so it is worth it. So just remember that poor doesn't have to mean poor in the traditional sense. So charities are finding different ways of defining that. And hardship isn't necessarily about money. It can, for example, be a carer who's time poor and in hardship because of that. So that document is on there. It's on the website, and you can download it if you want to have it there as a sort of crib sheet, or you're doing applications, or you want to give it to clients to look at. Also on there, on this page on the website, there's this document here, which is about giving feedback. And as I said before, you know, it's you can put all sorts of information on there that will either help us improve the database, or will help us sort of look at outcomes later on down the line if we've got your information. So you can tell us about your experience, you can tell us about what's missing, you can tell us about what's out of date. Yeah. And then finally, just thinking about down the line. So I've talked a little bit about how the database is going to be updated. We're going to update it in terms of, you know, that the information on that feedback sheet there. We're also going to do a periodic review. So maybe once a year, as I said before, we'll look at it, you know, we'll write out to the trustees and try to make sure we've got information that's up to date. These webinars are being recorded, so if you want a copy of a webinar to use, you know, to show people who haven't been able to attend today, then you can have a copy of the webinar, or you can have the notes and the handouts from this webinar if you want to put one on yourselves to train people. But it's not that complicated at all. So really, you know, watching the 3-minute demo might be enough for some people. And going forward, there might be other things that we can do with that. We're going to see how this goes, you know, evaluate it down the line. But it might well be that we can start to add other information to it as well. So, for example, at some point, we might be able to put things like food banks on there. There might be a roadmap which might lead to us adding organisations that provide services or other, you know, support for people in difficult situations. So that's all I've got to say. Are there any more questions? Okay, if there's not. So it would be helpful to me if you could just maybe add one thing to the chat about what you've got out today, and that will just help us with our evaluation. And then other than that, I just want to thank you for attending.
and say goodbye. Thank you very much. Hope that's been useful.